We'll look at, why must we study? Many people ask me, see, you are yourself saying that 200 years back everything got frozen in the British colonial era. अब क्यों जाना है? आगे चलते हैं? नहीं. There are certain important things that we cannot give up at all, and we'll see why that is important. That's the reason why we have to all the way study it again. Then we will look at how, see, it's, how many million manuscripts are lying without use, without translation in India, Sanskrit, Pali, Prakrit and all that. How many? An estimated 40 million, out of which many could be multiple copies and all that stuff. Okay, out of which 10 million are catalogued. Go to the government website on Namami, the National Manuscript Mission, you will see all that. There is a presentation by Dr. Bibek Debroy on this. So you will get, so even if all the 40 million means, even a small manuscript is considered as one, right? So some of them may be insignificant, but all of that, if it gets reduced to even 3 million, Greek Roman, it doesn't have that many toto. So we don't know what is there in our own past, and we can't study all of them, but there are certain first principles that will come very handy, because there is a foundational vision in Indian knowledge systems. अगर वो आपको पता है, then any text when you read, it does not appear alien to you. So that is very important. The unity across everything is important. So those concepts also we'll see. Next slide please. Okay, so Indian knowledge systems has 4 streams. One is Vaidika Parampara, that is for whom Vedas are axiomatic sources of knowledge. They accept Vedas as a pramana, and that's all the knowledge. Then you have Shramana Parampara, which does not reject the Vedas but does not accept it as source of knowledge, that is pramana. Axiom, it does not accept it as axiom. It needs validation for all of that. So that is Jaina Bauddha and so on and so forth, of which Jaina Bauddha, contemporary Sikh and so many others have well survived, and several Ajivika and others have vanished completely. So that is that. Then the Janajatiya Parampara, Janajatiya is a popular term in North India. In the South, we use a different term. Loka. So next line it will come. So Loka Janapada we call it. So Janapadiya we call it. So here it is, knowledge is not written primarily, not theorized, not formalized. It is practiced and embodied. What does that mean? That means like a weaver's knowledge. See, India has produced the most outstanding textile for millennia and hardly any Shastra, right? So that is, in the modern era, that is looked down upon. This is the shift in our mind that the West has created. In the West, Shastriya, formal, theorized knowledge is, axiomated knowledge is very important. So everything that you study in IIT Kanpur, any IIT, any modern institution, has formal, theorized, axiomated knowledge, axiom, theorem knowledge as primary. But there is a paradigm of knowledge for which that doesn't work. It's important to know that it's not that is by chance like that, that is by design like that. And India has excelled in that knowledge. East in general has excelled, but India has excelled even more. Remember that the Bangladesh weavers produced what? What did they produce? I don't know if that is the word, but I know a different term. Muslin they produced. So maybe that's another term there. So they produced saris that could be packed inside a matchbox, and it had such deep value across the world, such thin silk. So how did they do it? Is there any Shastra? The British cut off their thumb and the knowledge has died subsequently. It's working? Okay, okay. Knowledge has died subsequently. So that is all the pottery mining. We had Google for zinc mining in India, 14th century. World saw zinc mining in 18th, 19th century because the process is complicated. How did they do that? So, see, there is a book called, has there been a session on Dharampal here? No, it's important. I mean, like, it's important. I mean, I can't even overemphasize that. I'll keep on telling every day Dharampal once, forever. So, because the first volume is Science and Technology in British India. That's eye-opener. We had inoculation, we had, binomial theorem computation. So, we'll come to all of that. So, we had all of that. So, we need to, much of that knowledge was practiced and embodied. Science, what we call today, production. Production was practiced and embodied, not theorized. A model that cannot work, unthinkable today. So, we need, that is third model. We had great shipbuilding from the entire Southeast Asia influence is from India. Which state influenced Southeast Asia the max? Kalinga. The Kalingans were the first, Cholas subsequently. Okay, and then the Palas. So, entire coast has influenced, but max influence is from Kalinga. You go to any Southeast Asian nation, they respect Odia people a lot. And Biju Patnaik was a hero for them and all that. So, you see these connections, unfortunately we are not studying in history, and 1300 years of connection with Kalinga is there, Chola much lesser and all that stuff. Up until Shivaji we had fantastic seafaring. Veda itself has a story called Bhujyu story where he goes into the seas for trade. So, all this is not happening without ship making, boat making technology, of which hardly there is any Shastra. Fourth is composite tradition. That is, you can't say Yatra books. They're Jain thought, Vaidika thought, everything gets mixed, which is probably the way forward for our times. But that's what it is. So, these four streams of thought. And what I'm highlighting here is that, it's not that it's only philosophy, statecraft, medicine, engineering, maths, you're all IITians. You need to know that we stepped on to calculus 200 years before Leibniz and Newton. We were at the doorstep of calculus in 1450. Have you all heard of Madhava of Sangamagrama, Kerala School of Mathematics? That's what it is. So, of course, now world has gone significantly ahead. So, we cannot say, that's gone. Like we've lost it for 200, 300 years. But we don't need to feel that bad. We were ahead of most people till 1500. So, that's what all that we had, including fine arts, everything. Okay, but there is still something else that is important, and that is, so the three dimensions of our knowledge, as I put it, the Shastra is the first, which is theorized, formalized. We have enough knowledge of that. Textualized. Two, the Loka, the second one is Loka, which is practiced and embodied. Third is Adhunika. What is Adhunika? The first two were designed for embodiment. Please note this very clearly. Even formalized theory, Panini's Ashtadhyayi formalized, was also designed for embodiment. Practice, you should know it fully, you should live it. Yoga Sutras are not for knowing, but for practicing and embodying. So, knowledge itself got represented in a form that was helpful to embody. Okay, you cannot embody Newton's Principia Mathematica. You can know, intellectually you can know. There is no embodiment dimension to it. But Varaha Mihira's mathematics also was written in a form that you can embody. This is the essential difference. That's why shlokas, sutras and all of that. But that changed in 1800. So, we are now beginning to engage with a form of knowledge that cannot be embodied, and we are representing our own knowledge also. So for example, Vivekananda's exposition on Hinduism can be studied but cannot be embodied. Embodiment requires practice and other forms, for which you have to go to Ramakrishna Ashrama. They have designed other forms of practicing and embodying. But the book itself will not give you embodiment, but it will give you perspective. So this kind of knowledge we hardly engaged in the past, which we have begun. Ananda Kumaraswamy's, aesthetics, you will enjoy reading it, but that will still mean nothing to you because you cannot create any aesthetics. You cannot create anything through that. So this is called an explanatory form of knowledge, which in the modern era is, has reached its finesse. So we are all engaging in that form of knowledge. So there is a third stream of knowledge. So, Hindu P.C. Ray came to of Bengal in response to the British assault that we did not have any chemistry, wrote Hindu chemistry in I think 1893 or something like that. You can't do anything with it, but you will know it. So this mere knowing form of knowledge, and there are other dimensions to it. There is a book, there is a paper by Professor Naroddam Narasimha on, on the second half of Needham's question. This is a beautiful paper and you should read it. He explains what is the essential difference between the kind of scientific knowledge that the Greeks and the subsequent West represented, as opposed to the kind of knowledge, scientific knowledge or knowledge paradigm that evolved in India. So he has written two papers on this matter. Dr. Naroddam Narasimha was National Institute for Advanced Studies founder director, but before that he was National Aerospace Laboratories director also.
He was basically from IIT Bangalore.
Yes. Aerospace department before moving into NIL as a director. Okay. So I've had the fortune of listening to him on that paper, twice actually. Okay, but there is a philosophical basis to, rather there is a structural and conceptual knowledge structure to Indian knowledge, and that is, of all the Shastras that we have, 14 are called out as Chaturdasha Vidyasthanas. So Chaturdasha means 14, Vidyasthana means abode of knowledge, Sthana, it is position. Position there means, you can imagine, a three-dimensional space. Position means it occupies certain A, B, C, coordinate as the center. So the knowledge space is organized that way. And these are meta disciplines, the 4 Vedas, the 6 Vedangas and the 4 Upangas are called as the meta disciplines. Why are they called as Vidyasthanas or meta disciplines? Is because every other Shastra draws some things from each of this, or at least is a recommended form, and Arthashastra derives some things from this. Arthashastra is not part of the 14 but elevated to be part of 18. Ashtadasha Vidyasthana has Arthashastra also, Sthapatya Vidya and 4 others also come into that. But it is still derived, okay. It has significant element of, what do they derive? Rigveda is a first principles book. Yajurveda is a ritual organization that aligns daily life to the first principles. Samaveda is the musical celebration of the first principles. Atharva Veda is the organization of principles for the material world but based on the cosmic principles. So Rigveda is representing Rita. Rita is the number 1 concept in Indian knowledge systems, without which everything else will be different. If there is one concept that has made India different, it is Rita. We'll come to that later. Okay. So like that, why in the 6 Vedangas, Chandas is also a meta discipline. Why is Chandas a meta discipline? What is Chandas? It is prosody. That is because Indians believe that all knowledge cannot be captured in all rhythms for embodiment. So the number of prosodies, in collectively, if you take all of India's literature, I mean the kind of meter innovations that we have done is just mind boggling. I've been a student of Kannada literature, and every year we used to have, a section of old Kannada poetry, 2-3, and every poem, they crafted it in such a way that they always chose different, meters, vrittas, all that stuff, Matte Bhavi. What you can represent in Matte Bhavi Kridita, you cannot represent in, some Shatpadi. It's like that. So that's why certain complex kavyas used to have multiple, even in Vyasa, even Bhagavad Gita itself, if you take, there are 2 different meters out there. Vedas have multiple meters. So for that, but that's not ornament. That is by design, it is like that, because all forms of knowledge cannot be covered by all meters. That is the principle. Okay, and so on and so forth. Nyaya, today Mimamsa is an interpreting system which is now used, being applied to jurisprudence for precision. You can go and just Google Mimamsa and jurisprudence. You will get a lot of academic papers on that in the realm of law. Nyaya is both epistemology and a framework for consistent discourse. Very rigorous. There is a new book, particular book called Tarkasangraha, which actually should be studied, which is a technical book, which is worthy of being studied in a technical institution. And Itihasa Purana is also a form of knowledge because it's a narrative. So finally, everything has to get narrativized. So merely leaving it technically is not our approach. And then Dharma Shastra is the ethical, figuring out an ethical order. So that's why you have multiple Dharma Shastras. So these, the Indians have nurtured as 14 different meta disciplines to guide every other discipline. Natya Shastra will derive multiple things from it. So Natya Shastra is not just about music, dance, it's also about design, it's also about aesthetics, it's also about communication, so many things. So generally all our disciplines or Shastras are multidisciplinary by nature as a consequence of this. So that's one thing. Okay. So finally we'll end this part of the section with something called sutras. So all our knowledge, majority of the important pieces of knowledge are represented in verses, 4,000 verses that beautifully explain not just a grammar but an organized, it's an engine that has the ability, that is the first, what we call as generative grammar. And anybody with computational linguistics will know what a generative grammar is. And the structure is such that can be used to represent so many different languages. That has fascinated computer science folks, especially in the 90s. Noam Chomsky came and spoke of, Ashtadhyayi, and then all linguistics force and computer. So when I was doing my MTech, so my guide sent, Dr. Pushpak Bhattacharya, who just passed away, sent me to one Dr. Ramanujam in CDAC from Ahobilamet, who was a Sanskrit expert in CDAC at that time, to learn a few things and come from him. So I went one night to meet him, all the way. So it has fascinated, and I've seen now in the last 30 years growing fascination with Ashtadhyayi. Okay. So knowledge being represented as sutras, and so that's not, there is a definition for what is a sutra. Concise, aphoristic, maximum semantic density with minimum syllabic usage. This is a principle. So grammarians hair split to say, my representation has less syllable this thing than you. So they'll look at it, how many syllables, can it be reduced? Almost like encryption, like precision. It's a fascination. So grammarians believe that perfection in that will take them to moksha. Okay, it's an excessive form of indulgence, and but that has ensured that knowledge transmission is perfect and easy, non-corruption. So in a essay exposition, knowledge gets corrupted. So advantage of mathematics is exactly that, it's precise actually. So that is as a paradigm to represent mathematics, to represent grammar, to represent philosophy. Brahma Sutra is a collection of small number of sutras about what is the nature of reality, and so on and so forth. So this is a paradigm we need to appreciate. Understanding will take time. because it's too cryptic. Without the help of expositions, difficult to understand. But that is the dual nature in which our people have represented knowledge. Extreme end of complexity, then bhashyas and other things that will keep on elaborating multiple bhashyas. So you get a perspective through multiple different analysis of that. This is also the reason why from Vedas, based on the same Vedas, you have an Advaita philosophy, a Vishishta Advaita philosophy, and so many other forms of philosophies have emerged with the same axiomatic source of knowledge. Okay, so that's little more elaborating on that. But in interest of time, I'll move to the last part of this section. So, why do we have so many million texts if we have just 14 Ashtadasha Purana, Ashtadasha Chaturdasha Vidyasthanas and some important Shastras? That's because every Shastra has 10 different scholarly engagement with it, at least 10, there are many more. So, every Shastra will mandatorily have a Vyakhyana, that is commentary. Okay. So Adi Shankara has written Vyakhyana for Brahma Sutra and so on. So like that, Vyakhyana for Ashtadhyayi and so many other things will be there. Vritti, so it's an expository gloss. Gloss that is exposition oriented, not merely dictionary oriented. So the gloss that is written for the purpose of explanation. Then Tika, it's a sub-commentary, commentary on commentary. Okay. Then Bhashya, it's an elevated, authoritative commentary from among all the commentaries. Structure also is different for a Bhashya. Karika, it's a metrical exposition. Tippani, notes, just some notes. Prakarana Grantha is you picked an aspect of the Shastra and elaborated significantly. But when a Shastra gets Prakarana Grantha, it means its status got elevated, means it's a very important Shastra. Nibandha is a dictionary, compendium. So then Samiksha is a review. Actually, unfortunately today Samikshas of the past don't have as much exposure, but that's another thing. Many people criticize that we do not have a review. Criticism and review is coming from the West, but we did have that. And Anuvada, then that's fine. So these 10 different forms of engagement, that is why we have so many millions of manuscripts not yet translated, and this structuring helps us appreciate that. But when you have a little view of the Chaturdasha Vidyasthana, every text speaks to you much better. You will begin to see the unity behind the knowledge that has gotten created. Okay, I'll move further. See, I have a contrast with West, but I'll skip that because if I begin that, then other important elements I'll not be able to come. So someday we will come to that, but I'll leave it at this, that there is, okay, this is important. Some of you may know, this is a theoretical study, so take it with a pinch of salt because these are all not deterministic ones. But Angus Maddison did a study of world GDP, a complex approximated abstracted study, and concluded that India and China dominated the world GDP in the first millennia, and India almost dominated China overtakes us only sometime in 1500, and Indian slide started after 1800, which is when the British came, which is not surprising. The slide is not surprising because the industrial revolution has generated more wealth than any other times in the material wealth than any other time in the history of world. So that is not surprising, but that we held on to it till 1500 is 1600 is a big thing. And we should know that at a particular point in time in the first millennium, we kind of extracted so much gold from Greco-Roman world that there was a crisis of financial crisis in that. It happened through simple trade, not wanting to exploit it or extract it, but simple trade itself brought so much gold into India. So first millennium has been the most outstanding times for Indian history. and max knowledge got generated. These are some statements. So one Chinese ambassador said that India almost dominated China for 2 centuries, 20 centuries without actually, having any expedition. You can see Huan Sang's coming to India, and that story is so fascinating. What he takes back, goes back, why he came, all that is very, very fascinating, not told in history. Okay, and similarly we dominated Southeast Asia, although some military expeditions were there. So this I have drawn from an architectural comparison between a modern home and an ancient home in India, to say how the paradigm in the modern world has moved to Arthakama, whereas the even a house design was anchored on Puruṣārtha. So Puruṣārtha is not just, I will come to that subsequently, as the most defining feature of Indian life. So Dharmartha Kama Moksha combination is a a fractal that keeps reflecting itself in all parts, all aspects of our life. Even something like a home design or a town design or a road design, everything had a Dharmartha Kama Moksha component to it. So that I have elaborated. If time permits, I will come back. Another important thing is in mathematics, our Shulba Sutras and everything very constructive geometry. That is, every dimension of mathematical knowledge that we generated is explained through construction. Do this, do this, do this, do this, you will get this. That's because all mathematics was, in the initial years evolved as a consequence of Yajnavedi design. So due to which constructive form of mathematics, so Pythagoras, Shulba Sutras, Pythagoras is also very constructive, whereas Euclidean geometry is very deductive. All of that we study, and that I have elaborated. We will come to this if we have time. In the interest of time, I will move. Design of architecture also, there are 3 forms of differences: ontological, axiological, epistemological. Ontology means what we accept as reality. Axiology means what we value. Epistemology means how do we determine something is valid knowledge. In all 3 forms, there is significant difference between the West and the East, and I will come to this if time permits, but because I need to explain a few things. This is a bit slow, I don't know why. Okay, so contemporary last 300 years of Western knowledge has moved to dominion over matter and the material and the nature. So you should read Western philosophers of 17th century, 18th century. You will see that there is an assumed right over nature that is not there in India. That is actually a significant reason why knowledge has taken 2 different forms. So in India, every element being in harmony with the nature is a primary concern of India, as opposed to the Francis Bacon and all others, whatever they push through. There it is to step outside of nature. So these philosophy makes a difference to even science and technology. To understand that, one should read The Structure of Scientific Revolutions by Thomas Kuhn, a German philosopher. He has demonstrated that even in the modern Western science, every big revolution was a contribution not just of material understanding, but ideological interventions. So that's an important perspective that we actually in science institutions, Thomas Kuhn studying is very, very important. Philosophy of science should never be abdicated, because that's extremely important. Jagadish Chandra Bose, a lot of Jagadish Chandra Bose's research was guided by Swami Vivekananda and Sister Nivedita. There is written documentation of that, so you should read that, and it's so inspiring actually. Unfortunately, Jagadish Chandra Bose has been wiped out of the memory of, I was lucky in my 10th standard, I had a 50-page chapter on Jagadish Chandra Bose in our Kannada textbook, and I'm not even seeing that in Bengal actually. And we studied Jagadish Chandra Bose in great detail, and I was fascinated to read what all influences he had actually. Letters between Vivekananda and Bose and Nivedita was more interested in guiding Jagadish Chandra Bose. She saw that science can take a different form through Jagadish Chandra Bose actually. And his famous fight with Royal Society of England, because he moved from physics to biology and then spoke of plants having emotion and all that stuff. It caused a huge revolution actually. Okay, so we will move to the next part, the relevance. Why should we study? Like I said, always we keep getting questions about that. So, ek to it will help us connect with our own society better, because 80% of India still lives in the way the Indian knowledge system flowed over last 2000 years. So, just to have the right empathy with our own society, we will need that much. But not just that, in terms of humanities, very easily India is superior, because Vedanta and yoga are not just philosophies, but psychology is there. The Western psychology is very empirical. It has kept on trying to build models, and none of the models have delivered the value that they promised to deliver. If that had delivered, so much of mental health crisis wouldn't have been there. So now there is a recognition that new models are required, and yogic psychology will deliver new models without fail. So the wealth of psychology knowledge that exists in India has been completely unutilized. I am making this assertion consciously. I am not saying underutilized, I am saying unutilized. It has been pushed by the use of word religion and not even factored in. That factoring in has begun. Dr. Mala Kapadia has published a book on Bharatiya Manashastra. INDICA has published that. It is a science book. So that is one. Like that, there are several other areas in which we will step in to resolve some contemporary issues. Aesthetics, superior. Communication, you won't believe the amount of knowledge on what is good communication that has been spent in India is just mind boggling. So I made a presentation in Indian Institute of Mass Communication, Delhi, on communication thoughts, perspectives from 50 different texts of India, and 50 is just like that. There are so many others. So there are books like Vakyapadiya, etc. They are just like unbelievable beautiful, and we are missing it on. Those are subjects that should be studied here. Linguistics, aesthetics, Alankara and grammar, all of that are technical books. They are not narrative books. So those are stuff that should be studied in technical institutions. So that is the third dimension. Fourth dimension is even for policy, governance, etc. Amount of, I am now, I am the director of INDICA-Kautilya Centre. My focus is policy, governance and leadership through Indian knowledge systems. I am studying Rajadharma Parva of Mahabharata. I can tell you leadership perspectives, holistic leadership perspectives that recognizes all aspects of life, as opposed to modern management which does not recognize certain aspects of life. They are all mind boggling. So Indian knowledge systems will come back, except in mathematics and physical sciences, where the West has gone very far away. We may give it some new shape and all that stuff, but accept that fantastic, sophisticated material science technology has evolved from the West. Accept it, incorporate it, but to give it a sustainable shape, India will have to come into picture. There is no sustainability theory in the West. The sustainability crisis is acknowledged in the West today. So a new discipline called regenerative paradigm is emerging, but there is a lot that India can contribute to that journey, so on. So that is why we need to study. So this I have elaborated. So important civilizational differences are, change is well theorized in India. What is change? What is good change? Change alone is not valued. Good change is valued. Principles that determine what is good change is recognized in India. Sustainability is a consequence of that. Sustainability is a consequence of Puruṣārtha, and I have my first journey into Indian knowledge system started with a paper on how Puruṣārtha creates a sustainability and diversity. So, all of that, and we are the civilization that excelled in creating beauty beyond material and pleasure. There is science to it. The aesthetics of Indian life, whether it is house design, road design, any other design, is to create joy outside of the material. So, material consumption is less in India by philosophical design and not by chance, not because we couldn't. All of that is our civilizational features, and to understand all of that, some 15 principles are sufficient, which will come to the last part of my presentation. So, Rita, Dharma, Triguna, Trishakti, Panchabhutas, all these foundational concepts will help you very well in appreciating a wide variety of human concerns. So, Arthashastra has a lot of detail, what is 7 ways of engagement with adversaries, and those kind of classifications. To understand that, you have to go to the first principles of Rita, Dharma, Karma and all of that. If you have a sound grounding in 15-20 concepts, a lot of Indian knowledge you will be able to appreciate very well. Why Vakyapadiya is like this, why some Alankara Shastra is like this, you will get to know. Otherwise what happens is, it becomes too much of detail to absorb. So, we will also see this. Okay, so these are important pieces of knowledge that we can bring to contemporary reality. So, from Itihasa Purana, the amount of leadership models that you will get is mind boggling. So, I do this workshop on leadership models from Itihasa Purana. I have been doing it in Civil Services Academies and so many other places. And Nyaya Mimamsa, I said, is influencing jurisprudence. Rajadharma texts bring governance, ethics and justice. Puruṣārtha theory is the most potent well-being theory. Well-being is a crisis today. Well-being requires the recognition of the sacred, that is emphasized in India, and it is asserted that without recognizing and pursuing a sacred path, well-being is not possible, only with the pursuit of material artha kama. So, that is well theorized in India. So, like that, lots of you study Nyaya, it brings precision to your discourse and it offers a new way of looking at knowledge and epistemology. Natyashastra plus, so many texts are there. Aesthetics, design. Actually, in the 50s and 60s, the initial design professionals of India were deeply anchored in Indian texts. We only lost it after 1970. So, actually, if you go to 50s and 60s, you will see a lot more confidence in Indian modern scholars on ancient Indian knowledge post 1970, and I will not go into the reason of why after 70 things changed, but you just have to go back to 50s and 60s of our scholars and you will see the whole world is very different and how much has changed in the last 40-50 years. So, these are all applications, these are all bodies of new modern disciplines that can be reshaped productively to solve contemporary problems. Like I said, well-being, mental health crisis, now all institutions have started dean mental health, dean well-being and all that stuff. I do not know if in IIT Kanpur it is there, but I know 2 IITs where that has gotten started.
That is the government of India policy.
Maybe, yeah, I mean, so I mean the crisis is.
You cannot get accreditation, you cannot get this without really appointing psychological person.
So, which means that there is a crisis, otherwise this push would have not come through. So, why is that there? Ideally, progress should have meant more mental health, right? That contradiction itself we are not able to, we are not recognizing that contradiction, right? So, in the definition of progress itself something is wrong, due to which mental health crisis is there, so on and so forth. So, this is an example of a leadership framework that I have crafted from Rajadharma Parva, 56th chapter, 69th chapter of Shanti Parva, Mahabharata, which offers 4 different dimensions of leadership. First is in purpose. What is the purpose of Rajadharma or leader? 2, what are the characteristics of a leader that can help deliver that purpose? 3, what are the important pursuits of this? I won't make this presentation because this will take 1 hour now. 4th, look at this, this is important. It says the success of any leadership is that are people able to follow their own natural strengths? Are people happy and sthita in their own roles? Are people able to find their own natural boundaries, not you setting natural boundaries? Are they able to see what is the boundary that they should not cross by themselves, so on and so forth. So, there is a matrix for leadership and governance given in Mahabharata, which follows through all Rajadharma texts. So, that these are some, I have crafted a course as to how to look at Itihasa Purana as a offering leadership role models, and each role model is different, and we have more diverse role models for leadership than what modern management can offer. So, all of that, but if you understand Puruṣārtha, if you understand Rita, if you understand Srishti Sthiti Laya means creation, sustenance and dissolution is a cycle which you cannot avoid in India. Every moment something is getting created, something is getting, enhanced, something is dissolving itself. Appreciating this cycle is what is Rita, and if you don't have this, Mahabharata says, Kshaya, Sthana, Vriddhi, knowledge if the king does not have, he will not be a good king. So, there is no Kshaya knowledge required in modern world at all. We think only Vriddhi and Srishti, that's all is sufficient. That's not true. So, like that, lots of good principles are there in Indian knowledge systems which will help reshape the sustainability and well-being crisis of modern world. So, this is a framework I have put together to say what is the influence potential of Indian concepts to contemporary disciplines. For the policy framework, it is Puruṣārtha plus Chaturopaya. So, I have 2 papers written on that. How Puruṣārtha concept helps us relook at public policy objectives, and how execution framework comes from Chaturopaya, the Samadhana Bheda Danda, in a holistic manner. So, both I had the opportunity to present in as a part of a panel in 2 IIMB public policy conferences. So, all of that is possible. Okay. So, finally, I will end this session with some introduction to first principles. This is important. So, what is the most unique letter in our Varnamala? Varnamala is the alphabet set. What is the most unique letter? Ya will be there, in all, in languages. R is the most unique letter. There is no other language that has, no other culture that has anything equal to R. Okay. So, A, I, U, R, we have 2, R and R. R is not as much used, R is used, that itself is underused. The underuse is by design. See, but all differentiating words come from R. Which are the words? We know Rishi, then Rit, Rigved, Rik, Richa, Rina. They are all related words because they all follow from the Dhatu R that represents flow. Rita means complete flow. Ta comes by adding another pratyaya. There is a longer pratyaya which when added to r becomes rita. Means rita is defined in philosophy as Vishwaniyamaka Tattva, means universal principles of the cosmic order. Not law, but universal principles of the cosmic order. So there are certain realities of the cosmic order that you have to respect. Rishi is somebody who can see this flow always, past, present and future flow. Please, this also notes that it is emphasizing that world is in a flow. Okay, there is an inherent. So change is factored in the foundational nature of the universe in philosophy. Rina is our distance from Rita. Offering more Rina means we have gone too far away from the natural flow. Hence, we need to come back. Okay, Ritu is the seasonal reflection of Rita. So on and so forth. There is an interconnection across all words. Dhriti or any word that has ru has some meaning drawn from Rita. Dhriti means dhairya, right? It means that to face the Rita. It has a philosophical connection. We don't use it in material world like that. So that's why we need to studies. If studies 100 Sanskrit words means not meaning, but the dhatu split of that. Then you will go bonkers and see a fantastic amount of philosophy is packed in 200 words. And it's enough for you, frankly speaking. All you have to do is go to any of our, thankfully AI will help here. Go to any of our chatbots and say, give me the etymology of Ritambara. It will give you. Some mistakes can happen. Okay, across 2-3 platforms you will see. But most basic ones, they won't make a mistake. It's a mathematical formula. 4,000 rules of Panini will help you compute any word. Any word can be computed. So mistake won't happen. So you will get to know so much about how much knowledge is packed in just etymology of Sanskrit. So that's why I start with this is the most important critical first principles. Rita is the eternal cosmic order. Dharma maintains this cosmic order. Dharma is the collection of infinite collection of actions that will help you conform to Rita. Means it's not a law. It's endless. As long as an action is helping you move towards Rita, then it is Dharma. So that's why Dharma Sukshma, Bhishma calls. That it's very difficult to determine if this action right now, today, will help you move further or go back. Yajna is an action or a collective of actions for a particular purpose that maintains Rita, Dharma and Rita. How? The paradigm is, I'll explain in a final slide, that's the most important slide. If that one word is understood, it's any change, when you are also part of that change, you are offering yourselves also as part of that change, then its yajna component increases. In the modern world, that's not how it is. A change, you are subjecting somebody else to the change. You are outside that change. So king was supposed to perform yajna means that a thing that he is doing for the society, he has to subject himself to that mandatorily, including Paramatma himself subjects to this. So when Paramatma gets up, Bhagavata explains, he says there is nothing, so let me create the world from myself. A part of it he offers as ahuti. And so that story exists to represent the nature of sustainable change in Indian life. Yajna is the sustainable change. Triguna is, we recognize that outside world and inside world contains sattva, rajas, tamas as energies. Outside world and inside world contains ichha shakti, jnana shakti, kriya shakti. The right combination of the three alone will make yajna. Otherwise, it won't be yajna. So on, so forth. It says karma is that one individual action which is in conformance with yajna. A karmic action is a yajna aligned action. Puruṣārtha is dharma, artha, kama, moksha. Second part of my presentation is anchored on Puruṣārtha, so I will not elaborate further. So it represents not just 4 different forms of human pursuits, there is an interrelationship between them that brings balance to the whole thing. So like this, if you understand these concepts which I have elaborated in great detail, so they all conform to 3 layers: Adhibhautika, Adhyatmika, Adhidaivika. All Indian concepts can be organized as in 3 layers. So this is not very clear, slide is little dull. So Srishti, Sthiti, Laya. Srishti and Laya are Adhibhautika, but Sthiti is Adhyatmika. Rita is the dharma equivalent. Puruṣārtha, Artha, Kama is Srishti, Laya, Adhibhautika. Dharma, Rita is Adhidaivika. Adhidaivika means on the plane of Devatas. Devatas means natural forces that you can invoke. Moksha represents the Adhyatmika layers. Sthiti. The 5 yajnas: Brahma, Deva, Pitru, Bhuta, Manushya, which will explain. Manushya is what we give materially to people, Artha, Kama. Whereas Bhuta is something that brings balance to not just our offerings but to worldly balance. Sustainability comes from Bhuta Yajna. Knowing that what is the limit of the material service that you can offer. Pitru Yajna is it's sustenance and continuity. See, continuity is not valued in the West, it is break is valued. So the US is today going through a crisis of continuous break. Every generation wants to break free from the past. Previous generation is a conflict creation paradigm. But in India, the recognition that this breaking free is also natural, but striving for continuity is civilizational. This is how the balance is brought in. See, India has not criminalized any of these attitudes, but it recognizes its fallibility. Understanding human frailness and fallibility is the strength of Indian civilization. Indian knowledge systems represents that. So that is the 5 yajnas. Bring that. Brahma yajna is the knowledge, how to organize knowledge for this sustainability. Similarly, yoga is also organized like that, but I will skip these 2. But this is important. Ichha Shakti, Jnana Shakti, Kriya Shakti being organized for all of that. We have those 3 energies. Outside world is also represented as having those 3 energies. Organizing them correctly for yajna. Sattvara, recognizing that we have Sattvara. Bhagavad Gita is a beautiful exposition on Sattvara Rajas Tamas. 17th chapter is about Sattvara Rajas Tamas. 14th chapter is about Sattvara Rajas Tamas. In our excessive focus on karma, we are ignoring yajna, dana, tapas, karma, Sattvara Rajas Tamas. All of these have a balance in Bhagavad Gita. And that is a recognition of human energies. Most importantly, India recognizes there are 5 experiences of human beings. Annamaya, which is the material, bodily experience. Pranamaya, life force. That's why Vayu is important for India. Pranayama comes from that. Vayu is a layer for us actually. And in Mahabharata, just as an aside, I'll tell you a story. So, Vyasa is teaching Vedas to his Shishyas, the 4 Shishyas plus Shuka. And Shuka wants to go off to Himalayas, so Vyasa is very upset. So then they are chanting the Vedas. Suddenly wind blows strongly. Immediately Vyasa says stop. See, Vayu is Paramatma's breathing. And Veda chanting is also, invokes that. So when Vayu goes, you are not going to chant the Vedas. Stop till it subsides and then this is the extent of balance striving. And in Vyasa is in strife because Shuka wants to go off to moksha and Vyasa says I am not going to send there. So he is in enormous turmoil. In that turmoil also he does not forget that basic fundamental thing. So that is prana. Then Manomaya Kosha. Today we are overemphasizing the Manomaya Kosha. Mental health crisis is a consequence of that. India always says transcend the Manomaya Kosha. So the emphasis on transcending has reduced. Consequently, Manomaya Kosha's all Vikritis are there. That is the Vijnanamaya Kosha, a discretionary layer. It's not an intellectual discretionary layer. It is an emotional discretionary layer that you develop. This is the difference between Yudhishthira and Duryodhana or Shakuni. Duryodhana is stuck in Manomaya Kosha. Yudhishthira has transcended it. At birth he has transcended it. Others keep on oscillating between the two. And the blissful layer, there is a layer that is not Manomaya Kosha happiness, that is not Annamaya Kosha happiness. The modern world emphasizes on the Pranamaya Kosha happiness very enormously. Life force enjoyment is very high. But Anandamaya Kosha only will come through a yogic pursuit. So India says all five actually, so this is the ensemble of concepts with integrity. Give me any concept, I will place in this is my coordinate geometry for that. See, I'll give you a physics example. This is like PV is equal to RT. There is that mu constant. So adjustment, little bit of adjustment is still there. It's a perfect fitment for initial understanding. There is little bit of loosening, the diagram won't appear this beautifully, consistent in 3 layers. But to even do that mu of RT, you still need the PV equal to RT first. Then only you can do that. And that's the next step. So when we go advanced, then we'll figure out what comes a little down, little up and all that stuff. With this, I come to the end of my first presentation.